What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to our Bible study. Alrighty, so Leviticus 5. It seems like we've kind of gotten past just the different types of offerings, and maybe now we're getting on to... Yeah, because chapter 4 talked about sin offering procedures, but now we're getting into sins requiring a sin offering. So this is kind of a, all right, we talked about sin offerings and how they work. Now we're going to get into when they need to happen, like what causes... or, you know, what sins would necessitate such an offering. And then I guess a little bit more. Procedures for the guilt offering, I guess, is yet another type as well. So, still a little bit on a different type of offering, which makes offering type number 5, by the way, then, once we get into that. But anyway, okay. Here we go, chapter 5. Let's get this rolling. If you are called to testify about something you have seen or that you know about, it is sinful to refuse to testify, and you will be punished for your sin. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that is ceremonially unclean, such as the carcass of an unclean animal. When you realize what you have done, you must admit your defilement and your guilt. This is true whether it is a wild animal, a domestic animal, or an animal that scurries along the ground. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that makes a person unclean. When you realize what you have done, you must admit your guilt. Or suppose you make a foolish vow of any kind, whether its purpose is for good or for bad. When you realize its foolishness, you must admit your guilt. When you become aware of your guilt in any of these ways, you must confess your sin. Then you must bring to the Lord as the penalty for your sin a female from the flock, either a sheep or a goat. This is a sin offering with which the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord. And I assume if one of the leaders did this, or the high priest did any of these above things, that they would follow the procedures mentioned previously for the sin offerings. So basically, refusing to testify when you could, or touching something that makes you unclean. Or, and I guess the other one is making a foolish vow. Which, what exactly makes a vow foolish? I'm not totally sure, but, you know, some examples of that would be pretty obvious, others maybe less so, but either way, whichever one of these happened, they're required to confess, which... makes me wonder if that's part of the inspiration for, like, the Catholic practice of confession. Just a thought. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it's a thought. Footnote here, make atonement for your sin. Or make an atonement for you for your sin. Rather than... let's see here. Sin offering with which the priest will purify you from your sin. Or I guess, which the priest will make atonement for you for your sin. Would be the other way, instead of saying purify you. Possibly. Anyway. I guess I'll move along. Verse 7. But if you cannot afford to bring a sheep, you may bring to the Lord 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons as the penalty for your sin. One of the birds will be for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. You must bring them to the priest, who will present the first bird as the sin offering. He will wring its neck, but without severing its head from the body. Then he will sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering against the sides of the altar, and the rest of the blood will be drained out at the base of the altar. This is an offering for sin. The priest will then prepare the second bird as a burnt offering, following all the procedures that have been prescribed. Through this process, the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. Okay, so the procedures for the burnt offering would have been described back in chapter 1, toward the end of that, regarding, the how that was supposed to be done for the birds. And then, I guess, because of the birds obviously being smaller, there were two of those needed to kind of help make up for the difference in size/significance of the animal. It does not specify male or female when it's talking about the birds. We went over, especially in the previous chapter, which sin offerings needed to be male or female with regards to, sheep and livestock and whatnot. But it doesn't specify that for the birds. Anyway, I guess we'll move along to verse 11 here, because I don't really have anything else to say there. If you cannot afford to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, you may bring 2 quarts of choice flour for your sin offering. Since it is an offering for sin, you must not moisten it with olive oil or put any frankincense on it. Take the flour to the priest, who will scoop out a handful as a representative portion. He will burn it on the altar on top of the special gifts presented to the Lord. It is an offering for sin. Through this process, the priest will purify those who are guilty of any of these sins, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. The rest of the flour will belong to the priest, just as with the grain offering. Okay, so go back to chapter 2 to get a refresher on the, grain offering procedures. But since this is supposed to not be moistened with olive oil, I don't know if there are necessarily all the different options that it gave for the regular grain offerings in that chapter. In any case, you got the priest scooping out some, probably just like kind of tossing it on the fire, and then the rest gets saved. 2 quarts, footnote there, the Hebrew says 1/10 of an ephah, which, again, that was kind of their unit of measurement, equal to about 2.2 liters. Really? That doesn't seem to quite equate with what 2 quarts would be to my understanding. But, whatever, details. So the grain offering option was supposed to be like, okay, if you can't afford the birds or the sheep, then you have this option. But it was like, okay, generally speaking, you're supposed to use a sheep or a goat. But if you can't use a sheep or goat, then use the birds. And if you can't use the birds, then, yeah. Anyway. Alrighty. Moving on to verse 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, "If one of you commits a sin by unintentionally defiling the Lord's sacred property, you must bring a guilt offering to the Lord. The offering must be your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value with silver, as measured by the weight of the sanctuary shekel. You must make restitution for the sacred property you have harmed by paying for the loss, plus an additional 20%. When you give the payment to the priest, he will purify you with the ram sacrificed as a guilt offering, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. So, footnote there, just each shekel was about 0.4 ounces or 11 grams in weight. So, it doesn't specify the amount of silver, probably because, the value of a ram would change at times. But I think this is the first kind of offering mentioned that it actually says a reason for it before getting into the details of, what needs to be offered and how. But anyway, also the additional 20% is interesting. I guess it's supposed to, repay, or make up for what was damaged, as well as, have a cost for the offering to, have the payment / atonement / sacrifice, whatever word you want to put in there, to cover for the sin. But I gotta imagine there are some instances where the damage to the property and the additional 20% would way more than cover for the, for the corresponding sacrifice. So maybe it's more so just to make up for the loss. I just had a thought, but I don't need to get into that right now. Let's just say I've been reading up on, casualty insurance stuff, and this seems almost like it's a little bit related. But anyway. All right. I think I'm going to move on to verse 17 here and then wrap up the chapter. Suppose you sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. Even if you are unaware of what you have done, you are guilty and will be punished for your sin. For a guilt offering, you must bring to the priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you from your unintentional sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. This is a guilt offering, for you have been guilty of an offense against the Lord. So, violating one of the Lord, that seems to fit a pretty broad range of things. Is that supposed to be separate commands of the Lord, that are different from previous things that have been mentioned? Or is it specific commands from the Lord that aren't directly written as, part of the covenant or something like that? Because, God still gives other commands on things. So, maybe. I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what's the difference here? What do you mean violating one of the Lord's commands? We've established a whole bunch of commands. Does this fit under all of those? Or is this, separate commands? Again, me and not making assumptions on things. But otherwise, the guilt offering seems to be pretty similar, minus the additional 20% for the loss of sacred property in paying to, I guess, make up for that. Yeah. And I guess that about does it for now. Next chapter is going to get a little bit into sins requiring a guilt offering. So maybe those commands of the Lord will be explained in more detail in the next chapter. I don't know. This is why, like, certain things, actually a lot of things in the Bible, make a whole lot more sense when you consider the entirety of the Bible when looking at those. Because, you know, there are certain chapters that help explain other chapters, or even just other things. Like, some things from early in the Bible might explain things from later on a bit better, or whatever. But anyway, yeah, this is why it's not really a great idea to just take a verse, especially out of context, and just try to use that as a separate thing. But anyway, okay, so that's gonna do it for this chapter. Okay, so that's gonna do it for now. You know the deal. Like, share, subscribe, click the bell, all that good stuff. Look down in the description for info on social media pages. Leave comments below that. But I also want to plug something real quick, because something kind of cool happened after I recorded this video. And that is that, you know, further on in the live stream that this came from over on Twitch, I had this just big, long discussion with a couple of commenters in the chat. And it revolved around a whole bunch of different, you know, faith, Bible, Christian topics and stuff like that. Especially stuff like, you know, Satan, evil, faith, what I think it means to follow Jesus, like what the core of that is, all sorts of different things like that. Honestly, by the time it was done, I think the discussion was probably about 2 hours. So, I'm thinking about maybe bringing that over here just as something y'all could see. But for the moment, I just have it as a highlight on my Twitch channel page. So, definitely go over there and watch it if you're really interested in that for now. And if you want me to bring something like that over here to YouTube, since I have that as a highlight, I could probably go back there, download it, and then just upload it here on YouTube as a totally separate thing. So if that's something that you would like to see, but you don't really do Twitch, let me know down in the comments, or, you know, leave some sort of interaction thing to let me know that you'd like to see that. Because it is quite long, and it would take, you know, a bit of time that would otherwise put a pause at least a little bit on progress with making and uploading and publishing other videos. But still, oh yeah, and I suppose I should mention that this was from a November 26th live stream, actually. And that was when I made the highlight as well, because I was just like, okay, this was cool. I really liked this. I want this to be more permanent. So, yeah, just go over and look at that on Twitch if you want, or leave a comment down below if you want me to bring that on over here. Again, it is 2 hours. I don't expect people to be interested in the entire discussion, but especially after about the first 30 minutes to an hour, that's when it starts getting really interesting. So, anyway, yeah, just cool interaction that I had. Would love to have more conversations like that. So, of course, if you want to be part of the live streams, leave your comments on those live in the chat when I'm doing them. Go find my Twitch page, same channel name and everything. And I do those live streams on Saturdays, starting around 4 p.m. Central Time. And those are like exclusively Bible study related streams. I mean, if nothing else happens and I don't get chat engagement like that, maybe I'll, throw a little bit of gaming in there at the end after I've done the Bible study portion of things. But still, anyway, okay. Enough about that. So, yeah. Anyway, hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until whenever the next time is that you stop by the channel. Yeah, till then, stay cool, people.